hard stuff.
You were doing the hard stuff, Sega. My god. Okay, so we are at, what is it, day 23? And we are only just now getting to a freaking Sonic game, for crying out loud. Like, Sonic is one of the main reasons the Genesis did well. Why didn't you have a Sonic game ready to go at the start of the console's life cycle? It's like, man, my god. So, Sega knew they needed to have a Sonic game out at the time, but the question is, why did it take them so long to do it? Well, for starters, Sonic Team didn't want to do a Sonic game initially. They wanted to do Night, so they focused on putting that game out. Over in America, Sega of America wanted their Sega Technical Institute, who had been making spin-offs for the series, to produce Sonic 4 for the Sega Genesis, which would have been the game series' first 3D game. However, as development got underway, they were ordered to move development to the 32X, and what was on the Genesis ended up becoming Sonic 3D Blast. Then the 32X game got canceled, then it was moved to the Sega Saturn, where it became Sonic Extreme, which was supposed to be the big title for the Sega Saturn, the first Sonic game on the console. Unfortunately, development further unraveled. They had issues developing the graphics. The team was poorly managed. They were constantly at odds with Sega of America. Yuji Naka himself sort of sabotaged the project for denying the team the Knights engine for development. And worst of all, the game just wasn't taking shape, so when two of the project leads ended up going to the hospital due to stress-related illnesses, Sega just decided to pull the plug, and that was the end of Sonic Extreme. In order to just get Sonic out on the console, they had Traveler's Tales, who had put together Sonic 3D Blast on the Genesis, whip up a quick and dirty port of Sonic 3D Blast for the Saturn. And while it was the superior version of the game, a lot of people felt shortchanged by it. And after that, they ordered Sonic Team to make a Sonic game. But as they got their graphics engine in place, they were ordered to scrap development and move to the Dreamcast. So again, they just put out a compilation of the original 3 Genesis games, completely rebuilt for the Saturn, along with this nifty little extras menu called Hedgehog World, which is what you see here, and released it all as Sonic Jam. So that's 2 Sonic games on the console, and both of them are just repurposed from stuff on the Genesis, so no one was happy about that. So in an effort to get an original Sonic game out on the console, Sega contracted Traveler's Tales to see if they would be willing to try and put something together in time for the holiday season. Thankfully, Traveler's Tales had developed a 3D engine for the Sega Saturn that they could sort of finagle into a Sonic game, and it was built for a Formula 1 racing game, so they decided to do a racing game, and Sonic Team came on board to help with art assets and track design. And this would all come together to create the only original Sonic game for the Sega Saturn, which would be Sonic R. And my god, was it an absolute train wreck. Now, for the longest time, those of you who caught my Let's Play of Sonic spin-offs where I played Sonic R, you might remember that I had positive things to say about the game. And I still stand by that, but that was the PC version, and also the PC version re-released on the Sonic Gems collection. I had never played the Saturn version of the game before, and now I understand why so many people have such a negative opinion of Sonic R, because this game is awful on the Sega Saturn. Now, again, to the game's credit, the graphics here are pretty good. There's a lot more pop-in compared to the PC version of the game, and it definitely is a lot rougher, but you know, it's still impressive for the Saturn, and it does run pretty well too. I also admittedly enjoy the music of the game. While I think it's a terrible fit for Sonic as a whole, I still always find myself humming along with the tunes every time I play this game, and I still even listen to them like for my own enjoyment in my free time too. It is a decent soundtrack. It's just, you know, it's not a good Sonic soundtrack, but outside of the presentation, everything else about Sonic R is just abysmal. The controls are just awful, and I played this game with 2 different controls, and I could not do well with either of them. It just always felt so damn clunky. It was so hard to keep my character on the track. It's just, oh man. Like, I never realized how much better the controls were in the PC version, but man, playing it on Saturn, playing it on hardware, man, how ignorant was I? But, what else is bad about the game? The content. There are only 5 tracks in the game, and even worse, all the cool side content that they add to the PC version for the multiplayer mode, like Tag and Balloon Race, that's not in the Saturn version either. I mean, I know they were rushed, but good God, dude, like, man, it's like, I've always heard that Sonic R is considered to be one of the worst Sonic games of all time, and honestly, playing the Saturn version, I do agree with that now. This is a terrible, terrible, terrible game, but again, I wouldn't call Sonic R the absolute worst, because if you play the game on PC, play it on the Gems Collection, you will find not a great game, but one that is at least playable and fun to play if you got friends who know what they're doing. But that just wasn't what Sega needed at the time. They desperately needed a Sonic game, and though the PC version of Sonic R is good, like, that's small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. And I think it's telling that after that, Sega, not too long after that, Sega just kind of called it quits on the Sega Saturn in general, and the next Sonic game would enter development for the Sega Dreamcast, which thankfully was Sonic Adventure, which, as you know, was a great game and was the 3D Sonic game that everybody was waiting for. Like, they definitely course corrected with that, but yeah, the lack of a Sonic game, man, did that hurt Sega in the long run. If you have a system seller on one console, you need to get the next game in the series out on the follow-up hardware as soon as possible. That is just marketing 101. Like, I loved Knights. Panzer Dragoon was great, but the Saturn just needed Sonic. It just needed Sonic. But anyway, that's it for Sonic R, guys. Join me tomorrow as we take a look at the next game in the lineup.